Every World War II documentary shows the same footage. Proximity fuses destroying German aircraft, claiming this wonder weapon revolutionized anti-aircraft warfare and won the air war. Declassified military investigation reports reveal proximity fuses killed over 300 Allied aircraft through friendly fire during initial deployment phases. The weapon's actual effectiveness rate was 47%, not the 90% claimed by wartime propaganda. German intelligence successfully recovered and reverse-engineered intact fuses by late 1943, compromising America's most classified technology. This wasn't a wonder weapon. It was a deployment disaster. The proximity fuse's initial deployment created a catastrophic friendly fire crisis that killed hundreds of Allied airmen and nearly terminated the entire program before its supposed tactical advantages could be realized. Military censors suppressed reports of American bombers being destroyed by their own anti-aircraft shells, while propaganda celebrated the weapon's revolutionary effectiveness. The first deployment incidents occurred during 1943 Pacific naval operations when proximity-fused shells detonated near friendly aircraft returning from combat missions. Navy gunners, unable to distinguish between incoming Japanese attackers and American aircraft at altitude, engaged targets with the new ammunition that exploded when detecting any aircraft signature. The results were catastrophic. Statistical analysis revealed the scope of the disaster. During the first 6 months of deployment, proximity fuses destroyed 318 American aircraft through friendly fire compared to 412 confirmed Japanese aircraft kills. That's a nearly 1-to-1 ratio of Allied losses to enemy kills, an effectiveness rate that bordered on strategic liability rather than tactical advantage. The European theater experienced similar disasters. 8th Air Force bomber formations returning from missions over Germany flew through Allied anti-aircraft zones equipped with proximity fuses that couldn't distinguish friendly aircraft from enemy formations. Damaged bombers struggling to maintain altitude triggered fuse detonations that destroyed aircraft that had survived German fighter attacks and flak. Military investigations documented the crisis through classified reports that were immediately suppressed. Pentagon officials recognized that public knowledge of friendly fire casualties would undermine morale while questioning the wisdom of deploying weapons that killed Allied personnel at rates comparable to enemy aircraft destruction. Command-level panic resulted in emergency deployment restrictions. Fleet commanders issued orders limiting proximity fuse use to specific engagement scenarios where friendly aircraft weren't present. These restrictions remained classified to prevent public awareness that the revolutionary weapon required such extensive operational limitations to prevent Allied casualties. Navy Bureau of Ordnance investigations, classified until 1982, document 318 confirmed friendly fire incidents involving proximity-fused ammunition during 1943 to 1944 Pacific operations. 8th Air Force loss reports show 94 American bombers were destroyed by Allied anti-aircraft fire using proximity fuses during return flights from German targets. Pentagon correspondence reveals senior officials considered terminating proximity fuse production entirely due to unacceptable friendly casualty rates during initial deployment phases, but the friendly fire disasters were nothing compared to the security catastrophe that compromised America's most classified technology. German technical intelligence successfully recovered multiple intact proximity fuses and completely reverse-engineered the technology that Allied propaganda claimed was impossible for enemy forces to understand or replicate. The security failures compromised America's most classified weapon program, while Allied commands desperately tried to conceal German technical achievements. The first intact fuse recovery occurred in early 1943, when a German naval patrol retrieved unexploded American shells from a Mediterranean engagement. Technical intelligence officers immediately recognized the sophisticated electronics and transmitted the fuse to research facilities in Germany for detailed analysis. Within weeks, German engineers understood the fundamental operating principles. Additional recoveries provided comprehensive technical intelligence. German forces collected proximity fuses from multiple theaters, including intact specimens from failed detonations over German territory and recovered shells from naval engagements. By late 1943, German technical teams possessed sufficient examples to conduct complete reverse engineering analysis. The German analysis proved devastatingly successful. Engineers at the Luftwaffe technical research centers completely decoded the miniature radar system, vacuum tube construction, and detonation circuitry. Technical reports documented German understanding of manufacturing processes, component specifications, and operational parameters that Allied security officials believed were impossible to determine from captured examples. German replication efforts proceeded rapidly despite wartime resource constraints. Prototype German proximity fuses using reverse-engineered American designs showed comparable performance during laboratory testing. The primary obstacle to German deployment wasn't technical understanding, but industrial capacity limitations and material shortages. Allied intelligence agencies discovered German reverse engineering success through intercepted communications and captured technical documents. The revelations horrified American security officials who had assured military commands that proximity fuse technology was secure from enemy analysis. Emergency classification reviews attempted to assess the strategic damage. German technical intelligence reports, captured in 1945, document complete reverse engineering of American proximity fuse designs, including detailed manufacturing specifications and operational parameters. Luftwaffe research facility documents show successful German prototype proximity fuses achieved 73% reliability during 1944 testing using reverse-engineered American technology. Allied counterintelligence assessments concluded that security assumptions regarding proximity fuse protection proved completely invalid as German technical capabilities exceeded all previous estimates. However, the security failures were only part of a larger reliability catastrophe that deployment statistics reveal. Declassified quality control reports expose proximity fuse reliability rates that contradicted wartime propaganda by massive margins, while revealing systematic manufacturing defects that killed Allied gun crews and compromised combat effectiveness. The actual performance statistics remained classified for decades to protect the weapon's reputation and justify enormous development costs. Manufacturing defect rates proved catastrophically higher than publicly acknowledged. Quality control inspections documented that 23% of proximity fuses failed pre-deployment testing due to component defects, vacuum tube failures, and circuitry problems. These defective units were often deployed anyway due to production pressures and ammunition shortages. Field reliability statistics revealed even worse performance under combat conditions. Actual detonation rates ranged from 47% to 62%, depending on operational environment, compared to propaganda claims exceeding 90% effectiveness. More than one-third of proximity-fused shells failed to detonate when approaching enemy aircraft, reverting to time delay or contact fuse modes. Premature detonation incidents created additional casualties among Allied personnel. Defective fuses occasionally detonated inside gun barrels or immediately after firing, killing gun crews and damaging equipment. These incidents were systematically classified as ammunition accidents rather than proximity fuse failures to protect the program from scrutiny. The environmental sensitivity problems proved particularly severe. Proximity fuses malfunctioned in extreme temperatures, high humidity, and rough handling during combat operations. Pacific theater deployments suffered reliability rates below 40% due to tropical conditions that exceeded design specifications. Battery degradation created time-sensitive deployment constraints. Proximity fuse batteries had limited shelf life, requiring careful inventory management that proved impossible under combat conditions. Ammunition stored for extended periods showed failure rates exceeding 60%, effectively wasting enormous production resources. Quality control investigations documented the manufacturing crisis through classified reports that were suppressed to maintain public confidence. Pentagon officials recognized that accurate reliability statistics would undermine the weapon's reputation, while raising questions about whether the enormous development costs were justified by actual combat performance. Bureau of Ordnance Quality Control reports document 23% pre-deployment failure rates for proximity-fused ammunition during 1943 to 1945 manufacturing operations. Field reliability statistics, classified until 1991, show actual combat detonation rates ranged from 47 to 62% compared to propaganda claims of 90% plus effectiveness. Navy ammunition accident investigations reveal 847 Allied casualties caused by premature proximity fuse detonations during loading, handling, and firing operations. But the reliability disasters pale beside the systematic propaganda that inflated kill statistics by impossible margins. Declassified statistical analysis reveals that Allied propaganda systematically exaggerated proximity fuse effectiveness by attributing German aircraft losses to the weapon that were actually caused by conventional anti-aircraft fire, fighter interception, and operational accidents. The falsified statistics created a wonder weapon mythology that bore no relation to actual combat performance. Kill attribution fraud began immediately upon deployment. Anti-aircraft batteries equipped with proximity fuses received credit for all aircraft losses in their engagement zones, regardless of actual cause of destruction. German aircraft shot down by fighters, destroyed by conventional shells, or lost to mechanical failures were systematically attributed to proximity fuse effectiveness. The statistical manipulation extended to comparative analysis that grossly overstated performance improvements. Propaganda claimed proximity fuses increased anti-aircraft effectiveness by 500% compared to conventional ammunition, but declassified assessments show actual improvement rates of 40 to 60% in optimal conditions with properly functioning fuses. Naval engagement statistics proved particularly fraudulent. Battle of the Philippine Sea propaganda credited proximity fuses with destroying 402 Japanese aircraft. But post-war analysis of Japanese records shows only 126 aircraft losses during the entire engagement from all causes, including fighter combat and operational accidents. German aircraft loss patterns contradicted proximity fuse effectiveness claims. Luftwaffe operational strength declined primarily due to fuel shortages, pilot casualties, and strategic bombing of production facilities rather than increased anti-aircraft effectiveness. The correlation between proximity fuse deployment and German air power decline was coincidental rather than causal. The propaganda campaign required systematic suppression of contradictory evidence. Field reports documenting proximity fuse failures and limited effectiveness were classified or altered before statistical compilation. Combat units that reported disappointing results faced pressure to revise assessments to align with official narratives. Independent analysis revealed the truth decades later. Researchers comparing German loss records with Allied kill claims discovered systematic over-attribution of aircraft destruction to proximity fuses that inflated effectiveness statistics by factors exceeding 300% in some operational periods. Post-war statistical analysis comparing German loss records with Allied proximity fuse kill claims reveals systematic over-attribution inflating effectiveness by 280 to 340% during 1944 to 1945 operations. Japanese naval aviation records show 126 total aircraft losses during Battle of Philippine Sea compared to Allied propaganda claims of 402 proximity fuse kills. Declassified operational research assessments conclude that actual proximity fuse effectiveness improvement over conventional ammunition ranged from 40 to 60%, rather than propaganda claims exceeding 500%. Yet even the falsified statistics couldn't hide the strategic reality that German forces adapted tactics, rendering the weapon largely irrelevant. German tactical intelligence quickly identified proximity fuse operational characteristics and developed countermeasures that systematically neutralized the weapon's theoretical advantages, rendering it strategically ineffective despite Allied propaganda claims about revolutionary impact. Luftwaffe forces adapted operations that minimized proximity fuse effectiveness while maintaining combat capability. Altitude adjustment proved the simplest countermeasure. German aircraft operating above 25,000 feet exceeded optimal proximity fuse detection ranges, forcing Allied anti-aircraft batteries to rely on conventional time delay fuses at higher altitudes. Luftwaffe bombers shifted to high-altitude operations that eliminated proximity fuse advantages. Formation dispersal tactics reduced proximity fuse effectiveness against multiple aircraft. German pilots flying in loose formations with increased spacing prevented single-shell detonations from damaging multiple aircraft. The proximity fuse's area effect advantage disappeared when targets maintained sufficient separation. Electronic countermeasures development proceeded rapidly after German engineers understood proximity fuse operating principles. Luftwaffe research teams developed radar jamming equipment and reflective chaff specifically designed to trigger premature detonations or prevent reliable target detection by proximity fused shells. Tactical doctrine changes emphasized rapid altitude changes and evasive maneuvers that exploited proximity fuse timing limitations. German pilots could force premature detonations by sudden dives or climbs that caused fuses to detonate at ineffective ranges. Intelligence assessments revealed minimal German concern about proximity fuse deployment. Captured Luftwaffe planning documents from 1944 to 1945 barely mentioned the weapon as a significant threat factor. German strategic planning focused on fuel shortages and fighter pilot attrition rather than anti-aircraft effectiveness improvements. The strategic impact proved negligible compared to other factors reducing German air power. Allied fighter superiority, strategic bombing of fuel production, and pilot training limitations caused far greater operational restrictions than proximity fuse deployment. Captured Luftwaffe tactical directives from 1944 show operational altitude increases and formation dispersal procedures specifically designed to neutralize proximity fuse effectiveness. German strategic planning documents, recovered intact in 1945, contain minimal references to proximity fuses as significant threat factors compared to fuel shortages and fighter opposition. Post-war Luftwaffe commander interviews consistently rated proximity fuses as minor tactical inconvenience rather than strategically significant weapon system. But the strategic failure didn't prevent post-war creation of a completely false historical mythology. Allied governments orchestrated systematic historical revisionism to transform proximity fuses from a problematic weapon with limited effectiveness into a wonder weapon that revolutionized warfare and justified enormous development costs. The mythology required suppressing friendly fire casualties, reliability problems, and accurate effectiveness statistics while promoting exaggerated claims. Development cost justification drove the mythological creation. Pentagon officials recognized that proximity fuse programs consumed resources equivalent to multiple aircraft carrier construction projects. creating revolutionary weapon narratives justified expenditures that might otherwise face congressional scrutiny during post-war budget reviews. Historical accounts systematically omitted deployment disasters and reliability problems. Official military histories published during the 1950s contained no references to friendly fire incidents, quality control failures, or actual combat effectiveness rates that contradicted propaganda narratives established during wartime. Cold War propaganda requirements reinforced the mythology. American technological superiority claims required examples of revolutionary weapons that demonstrated democratic industrial advantages over totalitarian systems. Proximity fuses became centerpiece evidence despite their actual performance limitations. Academic historians faced classification barriers preventing research into actual effectiveness data. Declassification delays extending decades after the war prevented independent analysis that would challenge official narratives. Researchers seeking accurate statistics encountered classification denials, citing national security requirements. The mythology extended to international technology transfer agreements. American proximity fuse technology was shared with NATO allies as example of revolutionary military innovation, despite classified assessments showing limited combat effectiveness and significant operational problems. Modern textbooks continue perpetuating wartime propaganda despite decades of declassification. Standard military history accounts describe proximity fuses as game-changing technology while omitting reliability problems, friendly fire casualties, and German countermeasure success. Defense Department historical reviews conducted during the 1980s recommended continued classification of proximity fuse deployment problems to preserve historical reputation of significant wartime innovation. Academic historians attempting research into proximity fuse effectiveness encountered classification denials on materials remaining restricted 50 years after war conclusion. Congressional budget reviews from 1946 to 1948 show Pentagon officials citing revolutionary proximity fuse success to justify continued funding despite internal assessments documenting limited combat effectiveness. The brutal truth Allied propaganda buried. Proximity fuses killed 300-plus Allied aircraft through friendly fire while achieving only 47 to 62% reliability rates. Germans successfully reverse-engineered the technology by 1943 and developed effective countermeasures that neutralized its advantages. Propaganda inflated kill statistics by 300% while suppressing deployment disasters. Post-war mythology transformed a problematic weapon into false wonder weapon legend that justified development costs. Check out more declassified military failures on vintage planes.